Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our National Jeweler Supplier Spotlight webinar series. Today's webinar is presented by GIA, and it will cover the Winston Red diamond. So for those of you who might not know, the Winston Red is a rare 2.33 carat fancy red diamond that was recently donated to the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. It's part of a collection of 40 other natural color diamonds given to the museum by Ronald Winston, who is the oldest son of Harry Winston. Now, that collection is part of the National Gem Collection, and it went on view April 1st. Now, I'm going to turn it over to GIA and have them tell you a little bit more about that stone. Before I do, though, I want to let our attendees know that if they have a question, they can type it into the Zoom Q&A box. GIA will answer questions as they see fit throughout the webinar. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website by Friday. Now, I'll turn it over to GIA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Hi, everyone. My name is Ulrika Danes Johansson, and I'm the Senior Manager of Diamond Research at GIA, based out of the New York office. And today I am thrilled to give you a little bit of a story about the Winston Red diamond. So let me just share. So GIA has had the remarkable opportunity and honor to be able to work with the Smithsonian Institution along with the Paris School of Mines to study and examine this very, very rare diamond. As Michelle already introduced, the Winston Red, along with the Winston Fancy Color Diamond collection, was unveiled on April 1st, 2025, so just a few weeks ago. Sorry. And the Winston Red, as you can see here, is in a display cabinet where you have a rainbow of fancy colored diamonds, sort of like an orchestra, where the main orchestra member, the instructor, is the Winston Red in the center. And this is a glorious collection covering the full rainbow of colors with over 40 fancy colored diamonds. And this is a collection that Ronald Winston has generously donated after accumulating it over 60 years in his career. And here you have the Winston Red. So looking at that in a little bit more detail, the Winston Red is a 2.33 carat fancy red diamond. This means that it has no color modifiers. It doesn't have any browns, oranges, or purple hues to it. It's just a nice, brilliant, pure red. As an old mine cut and a clarity grade of I2 that GIA examined most recently in 2023. The clarity grade stems from a combination of natural inclusions, chips, and a shallow feather that crosses the table. Now, as part of this presentation, I really want to go through and unravel some of the mysteries of this unique diamond. How rare is it really? What is its history, its human history through time? Why is it red? And then finally, can we try to figure out what the geographic origin of this remarkable stone might be? Well, in order to do that, I introduce to you the Winston Red Diamond team. So the Smithsonian very generously invited both GIA and the Paris School of Mines to come visit the Smithsonian and really study this diamond in great depth prior to having it on the display. So GIA developed and customized a mobile lab, driving down from New York with a van stuffed with advanced instrumentation to the Smithsonian, where we set up a little lab in one of their laboratories. Now, before we sort of start looking at the rarity of the Winston Red and its color, let's take a step back and think about fancy colored diamonds. Now, fancy colored diamonds are famous for their rarity in themselves, their beauty, and obviously their astronomical value. And they're estimated to account for approximately 1 in 10,000 gem quality mined diamonds. Yet GIA really is in the unrivaled position where we have graded over 1 million of these specimens over the years. And as you can see here, amongst fancy color diamonds that are submitted to GIA, the most common colors are yellow or pink. Now, it is important to note, though, that this data set reflects what clients submit to us, resulting in an unrepresentation of less desirable colors, such as potentially browns or grays. But what about reds? They don't even make this chart. Well, they fall under the other section, i.e. less than 0.4%. Now let's look at those in a little bit greater depth. Now, when it comes to fancy colored diamonds, and in particular fancy red diamonds, they are really something that is rather unique. They are diamonds that are described as red or reddish, occur in a very limited range of tone and saturation. Consequently, GIA has applied only one fancy grade thus far, fancy. In other words, there are no fancy intense vivid, no fancy intense, fancy vivid, fancy light, fancy deep, or even fancy dark red diamonds, as might be found with all the other color diamond categories. Anything lighter in tone or saturation will fall into the fancy deep or fancy vivid pink range instead. So it's a very small subset of samples that fall into this desirable color range. Now, predominantly red diamonds, i.e. those that in a color grade would have red at the end, account for only 0.07 of the fancy color diamonds that have been submitted to GIA. And overall, only 0.04 are pure, unadulterated fancy red with no modifiers. The remainder of the fancy reds are going to be modified by purple, brown, or orange hues. In the historic records, there are only 24 fancy red diamonds, so just 24 red diamonds over 1 carat that have been reported. The largest known is the Mosiah of Red at 5.11 carats, which was on temporary display at the Smithsonian Natural Museum, the National Museum of Natural History, back in 2003. Now, how does the Winston Red rank here? Well, the Winston Red is the 5th largest fancy red diamond that has ever been examined by GIA, and the 2nd largest pure fancy red diamond that is in the public record. It is also the largest fancy red diamond on permanent display. Now let's take a look at sort of its history. So with the help from the archivists at Cartier, Harry Winston, and Francesca Brickell-Cartier, we were able to uncover the human history of the stone. Now, unfortunately, there's no information about when or where the stone was sourced, but it first appeared in 1938 when Cartier sold the diamond to the Maharaja of Nawanagar. And referring to this beautiful necklace that this Maharaja had, the ceremonial necklace of Nawanagar, Jacques Cartier suggested to put it in your big necklace between the green diamond and the pink diamond in the pedagogue. The red diamond would take the place of the white triangular diamond. Now, this piece of jewelry was considered to be a superb realization of a connoisseur's dream. And here we see that indeed that is what happened. The diamond was bought, purchased, and placed in that ceremonial necklace, as seen here in 1947, held by the Maharaja. In 1987, GIA had the first opportunity to examine the stone, where we graded it. And in 1988, Ronald Winston purchased the diamond. And he says that this red diamond is the highlight of his career. I have never seen anything else like it. At the time, he named it the Raj Red. And the following year, in 1989, the famous actress Brooke Shields wears the Winston Red diamond as part of the American collection for a Cartier event, where she's showing a colorless blue and the Winston Red diamond. Now, coming to more recent times, in 2023, Ronald Winston gifts the diamond, now known as the Winston Red, to the National Gem Collection at the Smithsonian. Again, in 2023, GIA had the opportunity to grade this remarkable stone. And I do say that it's remarkable and truly unforgettable, because at GIA, we still have the people who examined it when it first came through in 1987, and they remembered it. They noticed that this was exactly the same stone that they had seen before, because it is such a unique diamond. And then now, in 2025, it was unveiled the centerpiece of the Winston Fancy Color Diamond Collection. housed in the Winston Gallery, right next to the Hope Diamond. Now, what about the red color? Well, in order to understand the color of a diamond, we need to, unfortunately, do some spectroscopy. We need to pass it through some instrumentation to be able to see what is present in the stone that is creating the color. So this is with one of the instruments that we brought down to the Smithsonian. We pass through white light that consists of a rainbow of colors through the diamond, and certain wavelengths, certain colors are going to be absorbed. And then what passes through, what's transmitted, is this beautiful red color. And here we have a spectrum, a graph that is showing the intensity absorption of of light as a function of wavelength or energy or color. And what we can see here is what's known as the 550 nanometer band, this sort of broad hump, along with some other nitrogen-related features. Now, the 550 nanometer band is the primary source of the red color in this diamond, with the other nitrogen-related features giving it that nice unmodified hue. That's careful balance. That's creating this transmission window in the red part of the spectrum. Now, again, the 550 nanometer band feature has an unknown defect structure. However, it is related to plastic deformation. Although diamond is known for being a hard, brittle material, it can deform plastically under applied pressures at high temperatures. These conditions are able to generate crystal irregularities, which may interact with trace elements such as nitrogen that are present in the diamond. And they can also further develop depending on their residence conditions. Now, what we have here on the right is a illustration of a colorless rough diamond octahedron. Now, we apply this pressure, the natural deformation could potentially turn the diamond brown, or it could potentially turn the diamond pink, or if we're extremely lucky, rare event, it will turn it red. Now, there is still debate as to whether the brown, pink, and red color producing events occurred during residency in the mantle or during the diamond's explosive magnetic ascent. But a way to think of this is really, it's as if the Winston Red diamond has been squeezed intensely by Earth and is now intensely blushing. And this is really a true Goldilocks of diamonds, because it has to have a very careful balance of structural irregularities and trace impurities, requiring a just right geological history. And this can be seen if we look at it under a microscope. So this diamond shows, although it has an even appearance face up, under a microscope we're able to observe very weak colored graining and lamellae that are associated with the slip that has occurred due to the plastic deformation, and wavy textures. And again, we can see that this diamond is highly strained when viewed between cross polarizers. Now, since pink and red diamonds are so closely associated, it is instructive to compare it to pink diamonds, just because there has been a lot more research on these stones. So here we have an example of some of the diamonds that are at the Smithsonian. We have the De Young Red, a 5.03 carat red brown diamond. In the middle, the Winston Red. And then finally, the De Young Pink, a 2.83 carat fancy intense purplish pink diamond. And all of these diamonds are colored by the 550 band. Now, for the research that has been conducted on pink diamonds are by geologists and scientists grouped according to some of the visible features, as well as the types of impurities that they have present and their structures. So group 1 diamonds have have these wavy lamella going through it where the color is not restricted. They have linear strain features when viewed between cross polarizers, and they contain nitrogen that's aggregated, with most of them being aggregated into nitrogen pairs, known as A centers, rather than, most of them aggregated into B centers instead of A centers. So these are nitrogen aggregate forms. Then we have the group 2 diamonds that are the diamonds have also aggregated nitrogen, but most of them are still in their infancy and aggregated as nitrogen pairs, i.e. A's are bigger than B's. The color in these diamonds is restricted to very straight lamella with very little color in between. And when viewed between cross polarizers, they have a mottled strain that's disrupted by these intense lamellae. And then finally, the much more rare group is the group 3 diamond, which are type 2A diamonds, they have very even color, generally not as strong, and tatami strain type of patterns. Now, why is this useful to us? Well, with pink diamonds, they have actually been able to look at where they come from around the world. So the group 1 diamonds come from Australia, Venezuela, and Namibia. Obviously, Australia is well known for its vast amounts of pink diamonds at the Argyle mine that closed a few years ago. You have the group 2 diamonds that include those from Russia, Canada, South Africa, and Tanzania, as well as Namibian marine deposits. And then finally, the group 3 diamonds, there have unfortunately not been any detailed studies on those. But this is really one of the rare instances where the features of a diamond might potentially link it to a geographic origin. So considering these features, the Winston Red is colored by the 550 nanometer band. It has a higher concentration of B centers than A centers. So it's nitrogen containing with a very specific aggregation state. It has wavy graining. The color is not restricted to the lamellae, and the distribution of the luminescent defects that I'm not showing here is also consistent with group 1 pinks. In other words, the Winston Red appears to be similar to the group 1 pink diamonds, just a much more saturated version of them. So looking back at the geographic origin of pink diamonds and known red diamonds. So the red diamonds that have been found over the years are mainly concentrated at Australia, Brazil, or Russia, shown here as these little red triangles. Now, we said that the Winston Red is a type 1 diamond, group 1 diamond. That means that we can rule out all the group 2 localities. So Russia, Canada, South Africa, Tanzania, and the group 3 can be ruled out. So let's kick those out. Now, process of elimination continues. With group 1 diamonds, Australia, Venezuela, and Namibia, we can think back to the history of the stone. So the diamond was at least been traced back to 1938. That means that we can rule out places such as Australia, due to the Argyle deposit being first discovered in 1979, and Namibia, as diamond production there really only began in the 1960s. So this really leaves only 2 locations, Venezuela and Brazil. Now, notably, the Musayev Red and the Hancock Red, famous red diamonds as well, are examples of Brazilian red diamonds. So it looks like indeed the Winston Red's origin can be traced to potentially Venezuela or Brazil. So through this presentation, I've really gone through some of the key features of this diamond. We have answered how rare is it? The fancy red diamonds account for less than 0.05% of fancy colored diamonds that are submitted to GIA. This means that there are less than 1 in 25 million diamonds are going to have a fancy red color. And then out of those, this is the 5th largest ever recorded. It has a very glamorous history that has been traced back down to the 1938, with owners including Cartier, Maharajas, and then now finally Ronald Winston. And then its red color originates from natural deformation by high temperatures and pressures, requiring a very specific geological environment. And the geographic origin is likely Brazilian or Venezuelan. So with that, I just wanted to emphasize that science and history has here combined to create very unique insights into this national treasure. And GIA, with the team at the Smithsonian and the Paris School of Mines, have created a long-form article on this that's coming out in the spring edition of Gems and Gemology. So if you want to know any more details about this stone, there is a very in-depth study there. And then finally, this is really truly a remarkable diamond. It's the cherry on top of an astounding collection. And you all have the opportunity to just go to the Smithsonian and see it yourselves. Fancy red diamonds are so rare that Ronald Winston mentioned that his father, the king of diamonds, Harry Winston, had never seen a fancy red diamond. But this is the opportunity for all of you to go and visit it. This is a true national treasure. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention and look forward to any questions you may have.
Hello. Hi, it's Michelle. There is one question
Okay, thank you.
that came in on the chat. Someone wants to know, is it a vivid, fancy, deep? What he wanted more specifics on the kind of red.
So it's just a fancy red. So fancy red diamonds are unique in the sense that you don't have fancy vivid. Anything that's lower than a fancy red, so there is no other terminology for it. Fancy reds are just fancy reds. They might be modified, so they could be purplish reds or orangey reds or something along those lines, but there is no such thing as a fancy vivid red. In the same way that there is that anything that would fall lower in saturation and hue and tone than the fancy reds would just fall into the pink terminology.
Okay.
So there is no other color red. They're just fancy red because they have a very, very narrow range of tone and saturation.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. I actually didn't know that. Someone else wants to know, are there times when the red diamond is not available to be viewed at the Smithsonian?
No, this is part of their permanent collection.
Yeah. And someone else wants to know, are the 4 larger reds fancy reds or modified reds?
So the statistics that we were doing was specifically for the fancy reds, the unmodified red. So this is the 5th largest unmodified fancy red, pure fancy red with a pure unadulterated red color.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let me check one more time.
Thank you very much.
Someone else wanted to know 2 more questions. First, is it likely the diamond was found in an alluvial river deposit?
Yes, indeed. So both the Venezuelan and the Brazilian deposits that have shown evidence of pinks and reds are alluvial deposits. And for instance, the Hancock red and the Musayef red were all found on rivers in a specific region, the Minas Gerais region of Brazil.
And then someone else wanted to know, I don't know if you can answer this one, but what is the estimated value of this diamond?
Oh, unfortunately, we don't discuss the values of stones. I think that falls for both the Smithsonian and GIA. We just stay very practical with that. But they are sort of the record-breaking treasures that have the few rare diamonds that have been sold on public auction have had very high values. But then again, it's difficult to compare as well because this is such a rare, large red diamond as well.
Another question, was there any fluorescence?
Yes, there was weak blue fluorescence, I believe. There was some form of some intensity of blue fluorescence that was sort of shown on the grading report, and this is due to the presence of the N3 defect, which we observed in absorption, and we can also see in luminescence. So it's 3 nitrogen atoms surrounding a vacancy.
Okay. Gonna give people a couple seconds here to type in more questions. We've gotten some good ones so far. Anyone else?
And what I've given here is just really a snapshot of the flavor of the article. The article goes through all of the different spectroscopic features that we've looked at, the fluorescence behavior using a range of different techniques. We even do cathodoluminescence. We look at it in the sort of micron scale. So there really is so much to see in this article. Also, because GIA is lucky enough to have seen a series of red diamonds over the years, we present all the data on those to really place it in context.
And I have one last question. Was there any further investigation on geographical origin? And was there any research into the Brazilian inventor, Santos Luis Carrier, friend and associate who was a son of a landowner in Brazil? I don't know if the person who entered that could clarify a little bit, but.
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that person. Uh, we were primarily looking at the features of this diamond and how they compare to pink diamonds of known geographic origin. We did compare it to some red diamonds that we have seen at GIA that were reportedly from Brazil, and they showed consistent features as well. So it is consistent with the few red diamonds that are known to exist in the world. And again, details of those are included in the study.
And someone else want to know who cut this diamond. Are you able to tell us that?
Unfortunately, no. We were able to work with the archivists at Cartier, and they were able to trace it back to 1938. That sort of communication with the Maharaja. But we do not know where Cartier purchased the stone, where it was sourced from, nor who did the cutting. It is an old mine cut, so it is consistent with that era.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be pretty difficult to know exactly who cut it so long ago. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you, Ulrika, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. It was a great discussion, and I hope everyone learned a lot. And please have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.